Many fans believe that Kanye West is certified back. He's back from whatever it was that he was once on as being canceled, or in that area of seen as somebody who needs to be canceled because he was saying anti-Semitic remarks. But a lot of fans believe that he is canceled. He's actually knocked Taylor Swift out of her #1 spot with his new album Vultures. And I'll tell you guys, 100% Kanye West is one of my favorite Geminis to follow. Not necessarily because I believe everything or I think that everything that he says is upheld at some part, but I do think that he has a lot of resemblance of that Gemini energy, and we're going to talk about it. So recently somebody posted, Swiftie emergency. Guys, we got a Swiftie emergency. Beyonce's B's new single, Texas Hold'em, is challenging Kanye's West for a #1 debut on the Billboard Hot 100. Let's buy and stream Texas Hold'em to block him from that top spot. Remember, he just dragged Taylor on his latest Instagram post. And then they go on to say whatever it is that they want to say. And I'm just going to tell you guys now, Kanye's a very hard person to cancel. And there's many reasons why, and we'll look at his birth chart, but let's get into it. So then Kanye proceeds to basically let people know he's not going to be canceled. And he goes on this whole rant that's very much Kanye. And we have to remember he's a life path 11. So a lot of the stuff he says just comes out very naturally. He says, when I said that I'm the new Jesus, bitch, I wasn't even thinking about Taylor Swift. That whole line before, but I appreciate the free promo. Lil Wayne actually mentions Travis Kelce on Vultures. This album actually is super positive and fun. It's all about triumph. Last year was incredibly challenging for me, my wife, my children, friends, and family. I have been banned from hotels, kicked out of companies, and even not allowed to eat in some restaurants. Everyone saw Vultures ones get taken off platforms to limit our first week numbers. This reminds me of the mistreatment of my people because of the color of our skin. Remember, I was on Taylor's side when Scooter bought her masters behind her back. She and Beyonce are big inspirations to all musicians. We always say how both sell out tours and movies. Also, I'm sure I've been far more helpful to Taylor Swift's career than harmful. And I'm going to tell you, when you believe that the best press is free press, in all honesty, he might be right. To all the Taylor Swift fans, I'm not your enemy. I'm not your friend either, though. Laugh out loud. My wife had never been to a Super Bowl, so I wanted to walk around and have a nice time. We had such a fun day. So there's rumors floating around that Taylor Swift saw Kanye and she got him, booed him out of there. Oh, and to Shaq, I grew up looking up to you, and I would love to hang out with you and Jamie sometime. Jamie Slater is like a father figure to me. The media may control the narrative, but the people have spoken. Okay, so Kanye is a very diabolic messenger. He definitely takes the duality of a Gemini. He reminds me in some essence a lot like Tupac. And a lot like Trump, who are both Gemini sons as well. They're very outspoken. A lot of the things that they say are very controversial, but people who love it, and people who hate it, they hate it. So I want to take another look at Kanye's chart and some of the recent transits that I think will be affecting him in the upcoming year. And really, what do I think this year holds for him? I'll be honest, back last year, I was surprised that Kanye didn't file bankruptcy. I know that was one of the predictions that I made. I think he is still financially struggling. He's not at where it is that he once was or he wants to be. But I do think that there is a high potential he might get a little bit closer this year. So Kanye is a sun in Gemini. He is also believed to be a ascendant in Cancer, a moon in Pisces, and he is a life path of 11. It is believed that he is a fire snake energy. which in all honesty, as we are moving on to the wooden dragon year, this should be a very compatible year for Kanye. And also, I know many of us are thinking about that energy of the Saturn, because Kanye has a Pisces moon, and also Saturn is in Pisces. So in some ways, there might be feeling where he feels a little bit restricted on his creative path. And I think in some ways we've seen that, right? And also in areas of his emotions and areas of where he wants to speak up on certain situations, maybe he's been able to contain his emotions a little bit better. And I think we saw that with that Pisces moon emotion, definitely in the beginning of the year. But then I think Kanye's kind of like progressing back to the old Kanye in some ways. The old Kanye as being very outspoken, not the old Kanye on the same type of creative space, because he's never going back to that creative space. That was the old Kanye. This is a new Kanye. He's on a different level. And when you look at his Vultures album, it feels very centered around areas of looking at the occult, looking at almost like religions, multi-dimensions, and it feels very broad, where it almost feels like a little bit of a acid trip meets reality. But his houses are very dominant in his career houses, and that's why Kanye kind of reminds me of Cher in some aspects. Like, he's kind of like that energy, even though people try to cancel him. It's like we just can't get rid of him, even though I don't think anybody ever tried to cancel Cher as much as they try to cancel Kanye. And that is because of his outspoken energy, right? That energy that feels very combative. And it's because his dominant houses are his 10th, 9th, and 11th. The 11th really shows how the collective sees him. The 10th is all about his career. And the 9th is all about his area of philosophy. So Kanye has a huge stellium in his Taurus energy, which is in his 11th house. He has his Mercury, his Mars, his Chiron, and his Venus. So this energy feels very fixed. It feels very where it's almost like a balance and a go and a give with like material gains. I feel like he's always going to have a hard time with that. What's also interesting is that his Saturn is in Leo, and this Saturn in Leo is in his second house, which is traditionally ruled by Taurus, and that's the house of the material gains, the house of wealth. So it gives him this complex of restrictions, of boundaries, pushing people's boundaries, and then them taking stuff away, especially comes when to the leader aspect that he has. I mean, Kanye West probably isn't the best leader to have, but he does have that attitude that he wants to be a leader, and he wants to be a leader so bad. And he wants to inspire people, which I think he has inspired people, but also there's that dual aspect of the taking, the giving, and the more he speaks up, the more is taken away. And that's because some of the things that he's saying is just not realistic. It's just not appropriate. So what's interesting about Kanye's 10th house is in his 10th house, we have his Aries, and his Aries holds his energy of fortune, and also his midheaven. So what's interesting about this energy is because in this energy of the 10th house, we have the Aries in fortune, and then we also have the midheaven, and that energy is really around the reputation. So how he structures out his reputation really shows that energy of identity. I mean, some people would say that Kanye needs to humble himself, and that would make people like kind of be more welcoming to some of his ideas, mannerisms, and areas of creation. But what we've noticed is when Kanye humbles himself, he almost gets very silent and he doesn't speak up on anything. Where when Kanye is almost explosive and feels very interpretive, some of the collective cuts off, but then also some of the collective has this huge response where they're like, that's why we love Kanye. That's the reason why he has that reputation, and that's how come we're going to continue to follow and be intrigued by him. And then when we look at that 9th house of the Pisces, that area where the moon energy is, it makes me really feel like, in all honesty, he's going to have a somewhat of a better year than what's before, because Saturn is starting still in Pisces, but it's starting to kind of transition in some critical degrees, but not to the point where it should affect him as much. But what he really has going for him is that Jupiter in Gemini. because he will have a Jupiter in Gemini return in the area of the springtime. So for him, he might be on his area of creation and overall expansion. So I would just keep watching and let's see what happens next. Let me know what you think.